Hi everyone, welcome to the video. So today my group and I will talk about the humanitarian intervention in Cambodia crisis. But before that, I will introduce my group. So there are Amanda Jessia Borofidela Purba, and then there are Calvin Bimantara, and then the last one will be me, Jessia Fredrika. So I will open the presentation with introduction, and then we will continue with the humanitarian intervention by Calvin, and then we will talk about the international humanitarian law point of view by Amanda, and then to finish it all, I will conclude the presentation. So, for the introduction, in the year 1960, Cambodia was actually a country in crisis. Every country around Cambodia was in war with the United States. So, around 1969, the United States conducted an operation called Operation Menu and Operation Freedom Deal. This is actually a bombing campaign, and the point of this campaign is to prevent North Vietnam from moving its army across Cambodia to South Vietnam. So, the United States dropped around 2.7 million of bombs in Cambodia. This is more than what they dropped in Japan in around 1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, with that many bombs, there are around 50 until 200 civilians were killed. Now, this is where Khmer Rouge took part. So, what is Khmer Rouge? Khmer Rouge was a communist group led by Salazar, or famously known as Pol Pot. And this is they want to control Cambodia, and they going to rename Cambodia into Democratic of Kampuchea. So, they use United States bombing action, the Operation Menu, to recruit followers and also use it as an excuse for their brutal policies as they exercise their power. So their policies is guided by their belief that the citizens of Cambodia had been tainted by exposure from the outside ideas, especially by the capitalist West. The Khmer Rouge persecuted the educated, such as doctors, lawyers, and even military and also police. They also persecuted Christian, Buddhist, and also the Muslim citizen in Cambodia. So they want to create this kind of society where people work for common good. So they have this some kind of program called the re-education, where people are going to learn about the commune lifestyles. So people were divided into categories that reflected the trust that the Khmer Rouge had for them. And the most trustworthy group of people, they call it the old citizen. And then what the Khmer Rouge called for the pro-West and also the city dwellers was called the new citizen. But they have something like this group of people, they can level up, they can move up to a certain level. And then they name it as deportees and then candidates, and also some people have the name full right citizen. But obviously there's no such thing. They cannot go up, they cannot go level up. So yeah, people were divided into categories that reflected the Khmer Rouge, but it's not humane. So then this is where the Cambodian genocide occurred. So from the 1975 until 1979, there are around 1.5 million until 3 million civilians were killed. Those who refused to follow the re-education program were of course executed. Whoever the Khmer Rouge thought was an elite person was also executed. They even killed person who wear glasses because they thought, oh, people who wear glasses are educated, are an elite. So these victims were killed in the fields surrounding the commune, or in the notorious Tuol Sleng Center, also known as S21 prison camp. So that's it for the introduction, and we will continue to the humanitarian intervention by Calvin.
So hi guys, now I will tell you about the interventions of United Nations and Vietnam in Cambodia crisis. But first, let's start with the definitions of intervention. Intervention usually involves the violations of political independence or territorial integrity of the states. So in this case, United Nations on 23 October, the parties signed in Paris the agreements of the comprehensive political settlement of the Cambodia conflict. a peace treaty to end the conflict and prepare the country for elections. The agreements assigned to the United Nations an unprecedented role. The United Nations was to set up an operations the United Nations called the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, or UNTAC. In February 1992, the Security Council authorized the establishment of UNTAC. The deployment of UNTAC began officially on 15 March 1992 with the arrival in the capital city of Phnom Penh of the head of the UNTAC, the Secretary General Special Representative for Cambodia. So UNTAC carry out 6 basic peace-building tasks. The first is conducting a free and fair elections of the Constituent Assembly. Second, protecting and promoting human rights. Third, controlling civilian administrations and police. Fourth, drafting constitutions. Fifth, repatriating refugees. And last, supporting rehabilitations and economic recovery. Okay guys, now let's go one by one. So the first is conducting a free and fair elections of the Constituent Assembly. While election supervision has been part of traditional UN peacekeeping, it has taken on particular importance in second generations or expanded peacekeeping, and in the case of Cambodia, had several features that place this function within peace building. The UN was entirely responsible for the organizations and conduct of the elections, including voter registrations and education, vote counting, and determining whether the election was free and fair, the first of 3 steps of normal democratic transitions. The others being constituent, drafting by the elected assembly, and formations of new government. In addition, UNTAC was charged with preparing the populations for democratic participations, which has long-term implications beyond the one UN-run elections. From October 1992 through January 1993, UNTAC registered 4.6 million Cambodians, nearly all estimated legible voters. In accordance with the electoral law it drafted on May 23 until 28, 1993, elections took place and 4,200,067,192 voters, 9.56% of those registered participated. On June 10, Yesusik Akashi, the special representative of the Secretary General to Cambodia, declared that the elections had been free and fair, and on June 15, the Security Council and okay, now let's go to the second one. Human rights protections and promotions. The human rights mandate given UNTAC had perhaps the most far-reaching significance for peace-building and democratic empowerment. The effectiveness of human rights works derived in large part from the collaborations among UNTAC and local international NGOs. It was a modest beginning, the long-term impact of which has yet to be measured. Yet, the transitional period provides a mandate, resources, and a window of opportunity for an extraordinary amount of human rights education conceived to empower Cambodians to build structures and human governance. The Paris Agreement set out major obligations for the Cambodian parties and for the other signatories, spelled out by the Universal Declarations of Human Rights and other relevant international human rights instruments. So, UNTAC was given 3 tasks designed to accomplish its mandate of fostering an environment in which respect for human rights shall be ensured. So the first is human rights education, second, general human rights oversight, and the third, investigations of complaints and corrective action. Okay, now let's go over to control over civilian administration and police. UNTAC supervise or exercise direct control over administrative institutions, organs, and services that might influence the outcome of the election. These responsibilities were particularly heavy with respect to foreign affairs, defense, finance, public security, and state information. Since the Camarades, for the most part, provided no access to UNTAC, and the other two parties had no administrative service to speak of. This area of UNTAC mandate, almost exclusive, concerned the Phnom Penh government called the State of Cambodia or SOC, which control 80% of the territory. UN control over the administration was limited by the Paris Agreement to preventing the SOC from abusing its privileged positions as the de facto government to sway voters in its favor. The civil police component of UNTAC was supposed to supervise the SOC police, first to ensure that it respected the neutral political environment. Okay guys, now let's go to next part, which is constitution drafting. So the Paris Agreement called for the Constituent Assembly emerging from the elections to draft a new constitution containing a Declaration of Human Rights, consistent with the Universal Declarations and other relevant human rights texts. Okay, now let's go to repatriations of refugees. The Paris Agreement called for the Constituent Assembly emerging from the elections to draft a new constitution containing a Declaration of Human Rights. Consistent with the Universal Declarations and other relevant human rights texts, the Constitution was to provide for the effective enforcement of those rights through the courts, and was to explicitly declare Cambodia to be liberal democracy on the basis of pluralism, and provide for genuine periodic elections with the universal suffrage and an independent judiciary. The agreement listed at least 12 specific human rights as belonging in the constitutions. And now let's go to the last part, rehabilitations and economic recovery. The construction's dimension of peace building ranks among the most vital to establishing the economic and social conditions that will stabilize society, mitigate against the return to civil strife. According to an agenda for development, the Paris Agreement requested that the international community provide the economic and financial resources necessary for Cambodia recovery. Botus Ghali called for $593 million in assistance aid to Cambodia, and the pledging conference in Tokyo donations promised $880 million in the construction aid. Very little of this money reached the country during the transitional period. World-based support was also difficult to attract. The UNDP took the lead as coordinator of crisis constructions and development assistance after UNTAC departure. Okay guys, now let's move to Vietnam intervention. Vietnamese troops began a limited invasion of northeastern Cambodia on December 21, 1978. Then 4 days later, launched the main offensive on 3 axes in the southeast, converging on the capital of Phnom Penh. The Khmer regime tried tackling the Vietnamese attacks head-on, but its starving and demoralizing troops failed to mount an effective resistance. After just 2 weeks of fighting, Pol Pot's clique ordered its troops to melt into the jungle to wage a guerrilla resistance war, and fled Phnom Penh in 5 Hui helicopters, only narrowly dodging a Vietnamese airstrike. Only on January 7, Vietnamese tanks rolled into Phnom Penh, linking with the commandos earlier landed by helicopter, and installed a new government under Hun Sen, a former Khmer battalion commander. The Cambodia Navy was sunk 9 days later by the Vietnamese Navy in a bloody battle that saw 22 ships sunk. The invasion brought an end to the Cambodia monstrous genocide, but not to the war itself. The Cambodia waged a bloody guerrilla resistance war against the Vietnamese and their Cambodian allies, assisted by two more Western aligned resistance groups. The intervention in Cambodia was downplayed to the Vietnamese public.
Hello, my name is Amanda Jesha Fidela Purba, and I'm going to explain about Cambodia crisis on IHL point of view. First of all, we are going to talk about IHL classification. There is a classification of armed conflict in IHL, which is IAC or International Armed Conflict, and NIAC, Non-International Armed Conflict. First of all, we are going to talk about IHL classification. There is a classification of armed conflict in IHL, which is IAC or International Armed Conflict, and NIAC, Non-International Armed Conflict. For IAC, found in the 4 Geneva Convention and Additional Protocol 1. For NIAC, found in Article 3, common to the 4 Geneva Convention and Additional Protocol 2. So, international armed conflict is defined by armed conflict that arise between two or more high contracting parties, and when one or more states to arm force against another group, while non-international armed conflict defined by armed conflict between non-state armed group. So Cameroon is categorized as international armed conflict since there was United States as the state who contradict or fighting with Cameroon or Cambodia. Also China, Vietnam and Thailand get involved. China support Cameroon Communist Party, and Vietnam, Thailand invade Cambodia. Then we are going to talk about IHL basic principle on Cambodia crisis case. Cameroon violated IHL basic principle such as principle of distinction, precaution, proportionality, and unnecessary suffering. But the main principle that being violated heavily by Cameroon is the principle of distinction, because principle of distinction stated if the parties to the conflict must at all times distinguish between civilians and combatants. Attack may only be directed against combatants. Attack must not be directed against civilians. But in Cameroon's case, Pol Pot embraced Ankar ideology. So not only combatants but also civilians become the victims of Cameroon. People who join Cameroon, the member of Cameroon, also can get killed if they do something wrong or they do something without Cameroon's permission, no matter the age, no matter the gender, and no matter the position in the party. They also kill people they consider as elite. For example, people who wear glasses, because people who wear glasses seems like elite to Cameroon. And then Cambodia crisis child victims. Cameroon's victims is more than 2 million, including child victims. So according to IHL and ICRC, this is how children protection is. First, general protection. Children must not suffer from any harm at the hands of party to the conflict, especially vulnerable children. In fact, in Cameroon, children become custody of S21 prison. S21 prison is school that turned into prison by Cameroon. And inside the prison, children get beaten by executioners. They also don't get enough food, so they're starving inside. Second, special protection. More than 25 articles in 1944 Geneva Conventions and the 1977 additional protocols are devoted to the protection of children. For example, Article 24 of Fourth Convention that stated, children who are orphaned or separated from their family receive education and will be identified. In fact, Cambodia separated children from the family being abolished. And also children don't get education because Pol Pot think it's not necessary for them. And the third, child soldiers. Children under 15 are prohibited to be recruited forcibly or voluntarily. Children in Khmer Rouge forcibly join the Khmer Rouge, become like soldiers, they holding guns and they join the war. So that's all the Cambodia crisis on IHL point of view. The next topic will be explained by my friend. Thank you.
Now, to conclude our presentation, Cambodia was a country in crisis, with the United States attacking them with bombing campaigns such as the Operation Menu. It made things worse. This became an opportunity for the Khmer Rouge to seek followers and also took over Cambodia. They executed their policies and their beliefs, and now we know it as the Cambodian genocide. There is an intervention from the United Nations. They did a transitional authority and carried out 6 peace-building tasks. They also conducted a free and fair election of Constituent Assembly. And last but not least, UN also took over the control of civilian administration and also the police. Besides UN, Vietnam also conducted an intervention in Cambodia. Now, all of these intervention, they bring an end to the Cambodian genocide. Now, it can be clearly seen that what happened in Cambodia is a violation towards international humanitarian law and its principle that includes distinction, precaution, proportionality, and unnecessary suffering. Now, to finish it all, not only it violates the international humanitarian law, it is also a violation towards the rights of the children, as can be seen what they did to the children. They took the children to become an army and also executed children. So that's for our presentation. Hopefully what we present is understandable for you and become an important lesson for all of you. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.